Welcome to Integrate Online, presented by the West Virginia University Reed College of Media, which offers renowned online master's degree programs in marketing communications. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We're hosting the second Integrate Online Career Boost series with the LinkedIn How-To session featuring Bridget Borst-Ambris and Neil Stewart. Bridget is a PR and marketing professional with nearly 15 years of experience, and Neil is the VP of Sales and Marketing at Deschutes Brewery. Please be sure to keep your mics muted for the session and send questions in the chat feature. We'll do a little bit of a Q&A at the end. So I'll leave it to you guys to take it away. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, as Emily was saying, I run a boutique PR consulting firm, and we specialize in media strategy, communications planning, and just designing and executing thought leadership programs. But I also wear a different hat. I'm the vice president of communications and strategic partnerships at ATU, which is an IT solutions provider based in Pittsburgh. But my colleague Neil and I were chatting last week, and as we were chatting on this session, we thought, neither of us would consider ourselves authorities necessarily on LinkedIn, but we've certainly, in the sense of writing a book on LinkedIn, right? Or in terms of considering this our specialty. But we've certainly utilized the platform, have found some great results out of it, and really want to share with all of you what we've learned to job search, use LinkedIn to job search, use LinkedIn to build our connections and just grow our personal branding. So we've got some tips here for you. And we'll just go back and forth between the two of us. We'll watch for those questions in the chat box, try to answer some of those as we go along, and maybe even save some for the end. But my hope is that, even if some of you are applying some of these tips right now, my hope is that you'll at least take away 2 or 3 brand new tips that you haven't applied to date, right? That are turnkey, that you can start leveraging as soon as today. And hopefully that'll be a win for you and you'll start seeing results. So on that note, Neil, do you want to?
Sure. Can everyone hear me good? Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you, Neil.
Okay, great. Just always want to do a little sound check. All right, great. Well, Bridget, thanks for the opening there. Yeah, like Bridget said, not a published author in the world of LinkedIn, but Bridget, maybe we should write a book now, because I think we do have some good content here today. And whenever I do one of these online sessions, it's great to be able to implement some of these practices right away. And like Bridget said, hopefully you can do that. And the first one that we'll start with is setting objectives. So for any of you who are current students in the IMC program or graduates of the program, this will sound like familiar language. And just as you would with any kind of marketing program, you want to be clear on what you want to do. And so when it comes to setting objectives on LinkedIn, I just jotted down a few here that might be what your aspirations are. So for me, I like to get impressions for my content. And I use a little screenshot down there of just who's viewed my profile. Profile views are definitely an objective. You can see I was down 42% for that week, not so good. But over to the right, you can see that I had 79 people react to a post that I had put up, I think, last week or so. And so 79 people overall, 80 reactions, 2 comments. That was pretty good for me. So impressions, engagement, profile views. The other one for me is that second bullet point of being a thought leader. So I work in the beer business, and I work in both sales and marketing. I work with distributors all around the country. I work with the trade media. So there's about 3 different trade publications that I talk to on a frequent basis. And then also just general media when they're writing a story about the business of beer. I like for writers to be able to find me on LinkedIn and look at me as a thought leader. So those are some of the reasons why I use LinkedIn quite a bit. For some of you that might be looking for a job, you might be sending people to your website, your blog, or maybe even your podcast. And LinkedIn obviously is a place where you should be posting all of that content. And then increasing connections is that final bullet point there. You definitely want to increase connections. I'm not saying that you want to take a connection request from every single person that you get out there, but increasing the number of connections obviously is going to increase the likelihood that you are going to get contacted by a recruiter for a job.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, number 2 is mine as well. So keeping your profile updated. And Bridget and I talked about this one of like, you know, how basic do we want to get? But this is something that's pretty important. And some people may not realize that updating your profile is such a critical piece of using LinkedIn. And I included 3 examples here. Yeah, if you can go to that next slide. So they're kind of small, but the first one is editing your job preferences. So in that one, it allows you to pick out job titles that you think are the right match for you. I believe it allows like maybe 5, doesn't allow you to use everything, but there were 5 job titles that I might be interested in if I was looking for a job. And then it also allows you to choose certain locations. And I think there's 5 locations that it allows there as well. So making sure that you keep that updated is super important. The featured section is a section that's part of your profile that I don't know if everyone uses as much as they should, but you can see that there are, this is from my profile, there are some videos that I used as kind of like my featured work. It's almost like you have your resume, but then there's the portfolio section. So I highly recommend using that because it allows people obviously to see, you know, what kind of work you're capable of using. And then finally, licenses and certifications. I'll do a quick plug for LinkedIn Learning. So a few years ago, LinkedIn, I believe, merged with lynda.com, which you might have used in the past as, you know, just like an online learning platform. And LinkedIn Learning just has a ton of options out there. You can pretty much insert any subject matter into the search bar and it will come up with something. And then the nice thing is that when you complete some of those LinkedIn Learning classes, it actually gives you a certification. So utilizing that and making sure that anything that you're taking offline or away from LinkedIn is included in that as well. So make sure you keep your profile updated, make sure you have it set to public, and make sure that you're treating it as a living, breathing document.
Mm-hmm. And on Lynda, I just remember that, you know, back when it was lynda.com, I was watching one of the instructors over the course of, I don't know, 10 to 15 courses. And I remember I was at Inbound, as some of you may know as HubSpot's, you know, conference that they usually have in Boston. And I actually ran into one of those instructors and I'm like, hey, are you so-and-so? I felt like such a, you know, like such a fangirl, you know, but definitely some wonderful instructors and LinkedIn Learning. If you're not taking advantage of that, I would just reinforce Neil's point there.
Yeah, it's really good stuff.
That. Sure. So publish content regularly. Publish content regularly within your realm of expertise, right? If you see articles, if you see, you know, posts that are insightful to you, chances are they're going to be insightful to like-minded individuals within your network, right? And, you know, as you're publishing content, think of it as a two-way conversation. Invite people to participate. If you were connected with me on LinkedIn, you may have noticed that I shared an article last night on how folks are engaging their teams remotely and how they're achieving business continuity. And I say, you know, tell me what you're doing, right? So I'm inviting people into the conversation, and I even went as far to tag a few of my contacts, right, to really point them out and really encourage participation. So that's another way to publish. But as you can see here, I'm not sure how many of you use all of these different features that you see on the slide. A lot of folks just think, oh, I'm just going to post a status update. Well, you can do that, and you can add hashtags and tag folks like I did in the example from last night. But look, you can celebrate a teammate, and it gives you a template when you click that button. You can find an expert. I'm all the time looking for skilled writers, graphic designers, you know, SEM strategists, folks who are far smarter than I am in some of these different disciplines. So use that feature. If you're job searching, share your profile, right? So it's easily shared. If you want to create a poll, you're taking a temperature of an issue. I like the offer help feature that you see there in the bottom right, because, you know, whether it's a paid consulting offer or whether it's pro bono, right, where you're offering your services, make your network aware that you're there to help and that you specialize in something, right? If you want to offer help reviewing people's resumes, if you want to help coach folks on public speaking, whatever it is, right? Because the reality is that not only do your connections see that offer to help and you are positioning yourself as a resource, but their connections see, right? And you're coming up in the news feed a little more so, which we're going to talk about engagement in a couple slides from now, but wanted just to make you aware of all of the different ways that you can publish content regularly.
All right. So Bridget, we have a couple questions here. Maybe we'll address these real quick.
Yeah,
So
sure.
Sarah asks suggestions on what not to include on a LinkedIn profile. She notes that she's been around for a while, but nobody needs to know what I was doing in 1990. So I'll answer that one real quick, and then I'll throw it over to you. So I would say that you want to include anything that is part of your current profession. If you know what you were doing back in the early 90s is completely disconnected, I probably still would include it because you don't want to show that you have gaps in your professional profile. And then especially if it's anything that's connected with what you're doing currently, you want to include that. You may not need to go as deep in terms of the bullet points or the description, but I'll probably address this in this section. You do want to include anything that could be seen as a key word for your search. So I would probably lean towards including more rather than trying to pare it down. It's not like a paper or hard copy resume where you want to keep it to a page or 2 pages or whatever it might be.
Right. And I just to reiterate that, I mean, search, and that's what, Neil's going to talk about right now is optimizing those keywords. So you don't want to miss an opportunity, right? If some of those positions, those older dated positions might sort of help you enhance the visibility of your profile. And, oftentimes I see folks list dated positions, right? Like, 8 to 10 plus years ago that they've had. And it's literally just the company and the job title too. So that's an option. If you think that it's a completely different industry or role and like keyword optimization really isn't going to help raise the bar there for you, then that could be another option, is just including that title in that company.
Yep. There's another question here about changing careers. I think we'll probably talk about some opportunities if you're in the midst of changing a career here as we go through the presentation. And then a crash course for getting started in LinkedIn. I'll just go back to LinkedIn Learning real quick. So hopefully you take away some things here today, but LinkedIn, if you signed up for the premium membership and then get access to LinkedIn Learning, they have a bunch of classes on there for optimizing their platform.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add, as you're getting started, I think that overall it's important to treat your LinkedIn profile like a house, right? For those of you who are homeowners, maybe it's like you can always add a fresh coat of paint, you can always get some new furniture and, spruce up the front with some plants and so forth, right? With the features and things, the longer that you have the profile, and just make some smart adjustments. So treat it living, right? As a living resume, which we're going to get into here in a few slides. But I would say that if you can, before you start engaging your network, before you start really trying to put yourself out there, I would first, update your profile, right? Current job title, get the background image, like get all of that initial checklist, those items sort of marked off before you really start engaging folks in a meaningful, strategic way, right? Because you're driving folks to your profile, and if it's incomplete, then that's not necessarily putting your best foot forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Okay, let's go back to optimizing keywords here. Bridget, if you could go ahead and click to the next slide. So the big headline here is that you have to think like you're a recruiter. And when I say recruiter, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a headhunter. If you're maybe in an industry that doesn't use recruiters quite as often, it still applies, because a recruiter could be someone who works in an HR capacity. So if someone in the HR department is setting out, they've been tasked with finding the perfect candidate for a job, they're going to use LinkedIn as their starting point. That's probably the first place where they go. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, you want to include either your current job, and then some way, somehow, you want to weave in the words of the job title that you want. Again, so that it's more searchable. So if you're a social media coordinator and you want it to be you want to be considered for community manager positions, you want to make sure that you have the word community manager together somewhere in your profile. You want to maximize your about section. So again, this is where you want to make sure that it's not too long. There might even be some restrictions on how many characters you can include in that section, but you definitely want to utilize that about section to include all the keywords that are relevant to how someone might be searching for you on LinkedIn. So put a lot of thought into how you write that copy, and maybe audit it after you've written it. It might be a great description of who you are and what you do, but if it doesn't include those keywords, it's probably not functioning quite the way that you want it to be. Include key skills that you have. So a recruiter might be searching for someone who is a social media manager, but they have skills in Hootsuite. So if you've been trained in Hootsuite or some other social media platforms, you want to make sure that you have those included as well. And then finally, certifications. I mentioned that just a little while ago with those sections that you want to update your profile on. But certifications are a great way of demonstrating that you've continued your education, that you haven't just like graduated from college and you're done. It's a good signal to recruiters that you're constantly looking for new ways to thrive and learn. But it's also a good way to include just some good searchable terms.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Engage your network. So this is a big one. So Neil and I are going to divide and conquer because there's just so much that you could say under engage your network. The reality is that a lot of people are on LinkedIn, but not a lot of people are using it, leveraging it to its full capabilities, right? You want to engage your LinkedIn connections just like you would at a physical networking event, right? Congratulate somebody on a new job, comment on an article or a post that they shared that you found helpful. Again, invite that two-way conversation. I can't overstate the number of coffee dates, job opportunities, and partnerships, again, that have started for me with a LinkedIn connection. I mean, it's just been invaluable to engage my network and grow connections. For those of you who are in the job market, I'll tell you a quick story. I was job searching in a new city many years ago where I knew absolutely no one. And so I used LinkedIn as an integral part of my job search strategy. What I did was I made a list of companies I wanted to work for potentially in that city. I made a list of job titles that I wanted someday, and I started searching. I started sending LinkedIn connections, invitations to connect to people living in that area who either worked at the companies I wanted to work for or who had job titles that I wanted that maybe I didn't even recognize the company that they were working for. And so over the course of 3 to 4 months, as folks accepted my invitation to connect, I'd follow up with an email message because once they connect, you don't have to use an email credit, right? Because at that point you're connected and you can send them a message. So as soon as they accepted that invitation, I'd send a personal email to them, InMail, and say something to the effect of, hey, I'm Bridget. This is my skill set. This is my background. Do you or any of your connections, are any of you aware of a job opening that meets my background? Here's my resume. Please keep this on hand, right? And to my surprise, many folks set up informational interviews with me, standard interviews, coffee dates over the course of 3 to 4 months. I had several interviews and just continuing to grow my connections in that part of the country and ended up landing a job there right before the 4-month mark. So that's just, I think for me, proof that LinkedIn can be such an integral part of your job search strategy. But when you engage your network, take advantage to build strong industry connections, right? Whether you're job searching or not, there's lots of benefit to that. But when you engage with other people's posts, that enhances your professional image in at least two ways. Number one, as you're commenting on people's posts and sharing and reacting and so forth, you're staying on their radar. Your name appears more regularly in the news feed. And number two, recruiters or potential contacts or potential partnerships, folks go to your all activity and they can see that you're interested in other people's work, and that's just a great look, right? That's a great way to build your personal branding. So just can't overstate this section enough. But again, going back to what we said earlier, especially for the folks who are creating a new profile on LinkedIn, or maybe you're just giving it a facelift, you want to make sure before you start engaging your network in a serious, strategic way that that profile is updated and it's optimized, right? Before you start driving more eyeballs to it. Just wanted to offer that friendly reminder. But Neil, you had some smart things to say here as well. Just, again, big topic, and you had a great example.
Yeah, so I wanted to share this one. A couple days before we had our prep meeting for this presentation, I saw this on LinkedIn. It was just in my feed, and I actually don't know this person, so it's a great example of how a post can go viral. So this is a post from a guy named Evan Ashton, who has a really interesting story here. Unfortunately, he lost his job recently due to many of the layoffs happening right now. He works in the sports business industry. He has his resume over here to the right. So he worked for the San Antonio Spurs. So somehow, probably one of my connections, I used to live in San Antonio, probably liked his post, and then it ended up on my feed. And when I saw this, I actually read this entire post, even though it's fairly long. And there was just something about it that was, I think, very real and honest. And it made me want to help this guy. I don't have any jobs or any contacts in the industry that could help him right now. But if I did, I definitely would have reached out to him. So yeah, a couple lessons here. Number one would be, when you post something, don't be afraid to be real about it and really outline your situation. And then I think he also does a great job here of telling everyone, he has a strong passion for working in the sports business industry. So be real, be passionate. And then when you post these kinds of things, the opportunity, again, for it to go viral and be seen by many people is very possible. So I wanted to share this as a great example for being very engaging in the content that you create. And then one other thing I'll add to what Bridget was just saying, pet peeve of mine is when people reach out to connect with me and they just kind of use the standard copy that LinkedIn fills in for you when you reach out to someone. It just says, hey, I'd like to be your connection, or whatever it is. Whenever I see that, I'm far less likely to accept a connection from someone because it just feels like spam. So if you really do want to connect with someone, take the 2 minutes or even 30 seconds to customize the message that you're sending to that person. And I think the likelihood of that person accepting your request and then setting up one of those informational interviews is a heck of a lot higher.
No, I agree. And then just to piggyback off what Neil said, just the power of networking, right, and growing your connection. So a couple of weeks ago, I shared an article on my profile about how PR and marketing students and recent grads were experiencing canceled internships this summer in response to COVID, right? And so I had put as part of that article that I was sharing, hey, if any of my contacts are aware of a student or a recent graduate with a canceled internship this summer, please let me know. Because, I have friends who are hiring. I have connections that I'm more than happy to pass the resume along to. So it just so happened that a non-connection of mine saw that post from me because we had a mutual connection, and her daughter she was a rising senior in marketing and had a great internship lined up at Calvin Klein in New York City. And I connected with her daughter, and we've been exchanging emails the last couple of weeks. I have shared with her a couple of job leads. I've reviewed her resume. I've, tried to just, connect her with a couple of industry contacts there. I've put feelers out to my network. So I'm actively, enrolled with her, trying to help her secure another internship for this summer, remote, or just gain, you know, experience, even if it's unpaid, right? Some experience that she can use to highlight on her resume this summer. So just, again, goes back to Neil's point there. These are folks that we don't know, we weren't directly, you know, connected with, but he ended up seeing this post, and someone who was not connected with me saw my post. So just want to give you guys some of those examples of what's possible.
All right. Yeah, just a couple other notes here. So in terms of engaging your network, I think the more that you can post comments or like other posts or like other comments, the better off you are. And there, you know, LinkedIn, like Google, like Facebook, has an algorithm of how it favors content. And I would encourage you to Google this. You know, just Google LinkedIn algorithm, because there are a lot of great tips out there on you know, what types of content to write, and then there's another kind of theory out there that when you post content, the sooner that it gets engagement, the more that it will be posted in other people's feeds. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of game the system to your advantage. So please do that. But mainly what LinkedIn is looking for right now is dwell time. And so how much time are you spending on the platform? How much are you commenting? How much are you posting? How much are you liking? The more that you do that, the more LinkedIn likes you, and the more that they are going to promote your content. And obviously, the more your content is promoted, the more it's seen, and the more connections you have, and the likelihood of you getting contacted by someone or connecting with the right person increases. So take some time every day. This is my main recommendation. Take 10 minutes, maybe it's a half hour. For some people, it's hours. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that work in certain industries that are just building relationships and connections, and they spend hours at a time on LinkedIn making comments. And as far as I can tell, it works. So make sure you stay engaged with your entire network through a variety of different ways.
And, you know, I would just add to that, Neil, that it might impact what that objective is too, right? If you're job searching and you have a little bit more time on your hands, then you can spend a little bit more time engaging, right? Writing articles or sharing regular content and finding different articles that you find insightful and commenting and so forth. If you're not job searching, and, you know, maybe to Neil's point, it's just 10 minutes, right, a day. But while we're here, I do want to stop sharing the PowerPoint and give you sort of an example that feeds into this that I referenced earlier about engaging your network. Can you guys see my screen? Neil, can you give me a thumbs up if so? Okay,
Yeah,
good deal. So this is a post that I shared yesterday evening. This is an example of me engaging my network. It was a follow-on conversation that I was having with a couple of colleagues yesterday, and I wanted to take an informal poll about what others were doing, right? So you can see I'm engaging my network. I've got a couple of hashtags in here so that more people can find this conversation. I also tagged 5 individuals who work in my network who I thought might have smart things to say, and also opened it up to anyone, right? I named specific people, but said any others, you know, anybody else have any tips to share, right? Again, some more hashtags here at the bottom. So you can see it's had over 500 views, and I posted this, I think, at like 10 or 11 o'clock Eastern last night. So hasn't even been up 24 hours. So that's an example of how to engage your network. Just pull them into your posts there. So get creative. And I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint. All right, Neil, did you cover this, or is there anything?
Let's see here. So I talked about making it a habit. I'm going from the bottom up for some reason. Yeah, you know, the other point here is, you know, when you're posting your own content, you know, it's important then to make sure that you have a lot of thought and substance, and that's something that you're going to be proud for it to be out in the world. Same thing with comments. You know, make sure that you give that some thought. And think about ways that you can initiate engagement with others. So by, you know, Bridget just showed an example of by tagging people in the post, it's likely that they're going to share that as well. You know, in a comment, you might want to, you know, make your own comment and then ask a follow-up question to the person who posted it. And then again, LinkedIn is going to give you some favorability when you do that, because the more engagement that you have with your little comment, the more LinkedIn likes you.
Or even tag another person in the comment, right?
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
you're commenting, like, oh, hey, Neil, I think you might find this interesting too. Anything to add?
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean,
For sure.
treat it, guys, treat it like you know, a conversation at, you know, again, just a networking event or something, right? I think sometimes folks treat it a little differently, right? And shy away from that, but make it conversational. Number 6.
Yeah, so I wanted to share this one. So first of all, you know, LinkedIn makes it very easy to get recommendations these days. So there's a button on your profile that just says "Ask for a recommendation," and you can type in a few letters, and all of a sudden you can just start clicking on people and you know, ask them for a recommendation on the platform. Again, I would suggest customizing that request just so that it comes off as being more personal. But the other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, reaching out to people, you know, offline and asking for recommendations, I think is really important as well. A few years ago, I worked with someone who unfortunately was terminated from the company that I worked for, and you know, they wanted to find a job very quickly, and they reached out and they set a goal for themselves, and they said, look, I want to find a job as quickly as possible, and it's my goal to have 200 recommendations on LinkedIn. How awesome would that be if I had the support of, you know, 200 of my past coworkers? And, you know, so that kind of gave me a reason to want to engage with this person. This is a person who I really respected, so I wanted to help them out anyway. But when they set that goal, I knew that I could contribute to them reaching that goal. And I think that they did get to like 200 recommendations, and they got a job really fast. So I think if you give people a little bit of purpose behind why you're asking for the recommendation, even if it's just a short little sentence, it goes a long way. And so think about what your profile looks like. You know, I think I only have 8 recommendations. That's not so good. But, you know, if someone logs onto your profile and it's like 250 recommendations, it's pretty hard for them to imagine a scenario where you're not a valuable person to have on the team.
Right. It's a, you know, establishing credibility, another way to do that, right? And it goes back to the analogy I used earlier about building a house, right? You can always add a fresh coat of paint or another recommendation, right? Just build on it. But I think that that's so important to ask for recommendations for, again, just really enhancing that credibility.
Yep.
Consider LinkedIn your living resume. You know, there are often times where folks reach out to me for jobs, or I've been the hiring manager, and I see a resume, but I don't necessarily initially read it from top to bottom. I go straight to their LinkedIn profile because it offers so much more insight. It tells me so much more about who this person is and what they care about and what they do, right? So just wanted to set that tone, but 10 minutes every couple of months is what I apply. Every couple of months, I ask myself, you know, again, just up to 10 minutes, and I say, you know, is my background image right? Do I need to do headshot, or any of the links that I'm sharing on my profile dead? Sometimes you'll reassess it, and think, okay, nope, good to go. And then other times you'll think, oh, you know, that maybe I should tweak that a little bit, right? So I would just encourage you to make a habit every couple of months, just taking a few minutes and putting eyes back on your profile to reassess, which actually feeds into the third bullet there, which is to apply the guiding question. Is my profile sending the right message? Am I positioning myself in the right way, right? I think my profile says PR and marketing strategist. I don't have my profile right up in front of me, right? But does that still position who Bridget Borst Ombras is professionally, right? So apply that same guiding question to you, as well as the background photo and the content that you're sharing. Review all activity. I think like a recruiter, right? To Neil's point earlier, people look at your all activity. So see what they're seeing. And just to reiterate that, I'll I'll point that out to you just once more after I finish this slide, because I really want to call attention to that. But moving down the list here, in addition to publishing relevant, industry content, take advantage of writing articles, uploading videos, right? There's different content formats. Even writing articles, a lot of folks don't understand the difference. So if you publish a status update, like I showed you earlier, you can do a straight standard update, or you can add a poll or offer help or celebrate a team member. I mean, you can also write an article, and that's sort of your built-in LinkedIn blog. And it's really easy to use, and it doesn't have to be super long, even if you have a 200-word piece that you want to comment on or share, right? You have the capability to add a background photo to that blog post per se, that article. You can write a headline, a subheader. You can incorporate images within the text. It's really easy to use. So if you are a person who is a writer, especially if you're in marketing and you do any kind of content writing, I mean, I would encourage you to leverage that tool, the writing the article in particular. And then just be sure to, again, recommendations, endorsements, certifications, treat this as your living resume. Make sure this is up to date. You want to supercharge your profile, right, to stay ahead of the pack. Because again, a lot of people are on LinkedIn, but a lot of people are not utilizing and supercharging their profile to the maximum potential, right? So I'm going to stop sharing once more to give you an example of the all activity as we think like a recruiter here. I'm going to go back to this page before I was at posts, and I showed you what I posted last night. I don't know how many of you ever review your all activity. If you don't today, I would encourage you to take a peek at that, because that's what others see. And I often, if I am accepting a new connection on LinkedIn, if I'm researching a job candidate or a potential business partner, I always go to their all activity, because I want to see the people they're connected with, who they're liking, what content they're reacting to, who's engaging with them. So you can see here just my all activity that includes reactions and comments and shares and so forth. If you want to specifically see the articles they've written or the posts that they've shared or their documents they've uploaded, you can do all of that here. So that's just another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention if it's not an aspect that you're using today.
That's a good one. I haven't done that.
Well, here we are, just knowledge sharing, Neil, even you and I. So Neil, I know we're here on 7, moving towards 8, but I have the slide full screen, so I can't see any of the questions or comments. Are we in a good place, or are there any questions we need to answer?
Maybe just pause quickly for a couple questions.
Sure.
So Sarah asks, how does she make sure that she doesn't look like she's pouncing or just appearing as another salesperson when she's really just trying to create engagement with people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So oftentimes it's funny because my husband's in sales, and I pick on him. I tell him don't do this, is what not to do, right, when it comes to LinkedIn. But you want to be careful, even like in the in-mail messages, right? If they sound super promotional, super salesy. I think, Sarah, my counsel to you is to provide relevant contact. If you have content that helps make people's situations better, or not content, it could be solutions or tools or services, whatever it is that you're selling, right? If that truly helps make someone's situation better, if it's relevant, do your homework, right? What is that person talking about on their LinkedIn profile? Has their company made any recent announcements, right? Be relevant when you reach out to that person, because it's just good basics of building a relationship, right? Whether that's online, on LinkedIn, or outside, right? Offline. I think that, people want you to seek to understand, right? They want you to they don't want a one size fits all message. So I would just encourage you to do your homework a little bit and make sure that you are crafting an in-mail message or a content that you're sharing, whether it's an article or a post, whatever it is that you're sharing. Just try to make that tailored and relevant to your key audience. And one way you could, maybe if it's a post, you could invite them to participate, right? You could say, what are others thinking, right? Or what questions do you have around X topic or X service? I'd love to be a resource for you.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. Yeah, just adding value to the conversation rather than taking value.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's one more question here. How do you handle linking or talking about your work when it was completed in collaboration with others? Maybe it's with a staff that you supervised or led through the process. I think if you're part of the team that completed the task, then by all means, you can link to that. You can acknowledge the fact that you were part of a team. Maybe you don't want to say I did this by myself. You should never misrepresent yourself. But I think in this era of business, so much is done in terms of completing tasks as teams, and we're contributing. We're leading teams. So I think by all means you should highlight any project that you've been involved with.
Right. And I would say that if your question specifically in regards to sort of the resume area, right, your career history where you've got the company and the job title and you've got some bullets there, right? Maybe you want to, for instance, highlight a campaign or an event. If you were sort of the project manager on one of those two things, I think that I think that you could very well say, I spearheaded this effort, or I drove this effort. If you were just a part of the project, you didn't spearhead it, you could say, I, in collaboration with our team, we delivered X results, or, I helped to drive awareness around X. Right? If you were uploading, in my business, which is media, right? Earned media and news stories, or maybe you have a video that you helped produce and you want to add that as sort of your portfolio or part of your featured section. There's a description there, I believe, right, Neil? Where not only do you put the link to the video, for instance, or whatever it is that you're sharing in the title, but there's a description there where you could explain that. I'm really proud to be part of this effort where I collaborated, whatever. You can explain that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. It's all about those action words. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's a situation where someone is the client and they've hired an agency, someone like yourself, Bridget, and they briefed you on the project and you might have executed it, but your client certainly could take the credit for leading the development or strategizing the project or whatever that action word is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Great. I think we're good.
All right. So pivoting back here to tip number 8. Once you start to publish, utilize the featured section, which Neil referenced earlier. I just wanted to call special attention to it here because, again, you want to look for visible expertise, right? Whether you're writing articles, whether you're producing a video, whether you were on a podcast, right? Here are a couple of examples from my connections that I wanted you to see, but this is a way to put your best work front and center, right? And some of you might not see this section on your profile today because you have to add it. So let me walk you through that part really quickly for those of you who might find this as a new tip, right? So you can go to your profile here and look, here at the top, you can add profile sections. There's all of these different sections that you can add in addition to just the basic education and work experience sections, right? So you can add the featured section and you can add what format the content is that you're adding, right? The articles, the links, the media, and so forth. That way, the first half of your profile, the first top there, you've got at the top, you've got this featured section, and this is just almost like your portfolio, right? Your online portfolio front and center. Just gives folks sort of a snack size, look at some of your recent work. So going back to the deck here, thank you for your patience as I toggle between the two. But that's really all I wanted to highlight in this section. And again, you might not be ready for a featured section today, especially if you're in the middle of a career move. Maybe you're changing industries completely, and maybe you're just sort of trying to reassess, right? Course correct and think, well, what is it? How do I really want to position myself, right? What work do I want to put front and center? Right? So maybe for you, what's right is a pause, right? And then you come back to it a couple weeks or a couple months later, and then add the featured section and start, adding different pieces there.
Hey, Bridget, question for you real quick from me. So I'm a big fan of using YouTube videos in that featured section, but you don't have to. It looks like some of these examples you have here might be, let's see, PowerPoint slides. So I think a few years ago, LinkedIn also bought a website called SlideShare.
Right.
And so with SlideShare, it's kind of YouTube for PowerPoint. And so what you could do is you could post your own kind of thought leadership piece where you create a PowerPoint presentation, and then you could link to that here. So that might be a good way. If you don't have any, relevant work examples, you could always, again, kind of just analyze the current state of an industry or provide some ideas on where the industry should go. And then that allows someone to kind of see the way you think.
Absolutely. And friends, let me tell you this. This is more than just, Facebook and adding friends on Facebook, right? I mean, professionally speaking, LinkedIn, I mean, this is your built-in blog platform with the article feature. It's your portfolio, your online portfolio with the featured section, right? And all the different content pieces that you can add. It's, folks a lot of times historically used to put, references upon request at the bottom of the resume. You've got recommendations here, right? You have a living resume. Folks can see who you're connected with. They can get analytics into what you're doing, what you're commenting on, how you're engaging, what interests you. I mean, folks, this is more than just a resume. And I just see way too many times folks just doing the bare minimum when it comes to LinkedIn, right? And just wanted to make sure that you folks are aware of all of these different avenues that you can take to engage and grow your network and really see results. Moving on here, tip number 9. So if you're job searching, right? If you work in PR, Marcom, sales, that kind of role in particular, a lot of times in my experience, it is definitely worth the investment. So there's different premium, upgrading to premium, I mean, is worth the investment. If you can afford it, right? I mean, there's different tiers. I think there's 4, the lowest tier premium is, I think, $29.99 a month. And so I just encourage you, if you work in one of these industries, or especially if you're job searching, if you can swing that monthly subscription, I just can't speak to the value enough. It's not a must-have, but it's a nice to have, especially if you want to especially if you want to stay a couple of steps ahead of the pack. It allows you to see who's viewed your profile, gives you more analytics. If you apply for a job, you can see how you measure up to other applicants who have applied for that same job. You can get salary insights. You get access to more educational content, depending on which of the 4 premium tiers that you're at. You get a certain number of in-mail messages. And the beauty of in-mail messages is that if you are trying to reach out to a potential employer, a recruiter, someone that you want to have a conversation with, which is great in sales and marketing, right? Or even PR if you're trying to establish a relationship with a journalist, you don't have to be connected with them to send them a message, right? You might get, don't quote me on the number of in-mail credits that you get per tier. That's something you'll need to research. But for example, it might be 6 in-mail credits for the lowest tier, 10 to 15 a month for the second highest tier, and so forth, which means that you can connect with folks who are outside of your network. I think that it's just a great enhancement to networking. Again, if you meet this profile here, this set of criteria especially. But again, folks have different opinions around that, but that's certainly helped in my professional experience.
Yeah, I think you get like 6 per month.
Okay.
Is where it works, 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think if you're actively looking for a job, it's definitely worth the investment. Yeah, $30 a month. When you get the job, then you can end the membership immediately.
Right.
You can pay on an annual basis. If you're in a line of work where you need it ongoing, then that's the way to go. But I think if you're looking for a job, just doing it month by month is the right choice. The reason why I've used it in the past more than anything is because of the analytics that it provides. But it also, when you submit your resume via LinkedIn, so LinkedIn has, obviously a lot of jobs posted to it, and you can do it very quickly. And allegedly, it puts your resume kind of at the top of the stack. Mm-hmm. So the likelihood of your resume being seen goes up, and then it also tells you when your resume has been reviewed. Mm-hmm. And that's always kind of a big deal with me. I'm like, all right, well, did anybody see it? Okay, great. Someone saw it. I've done my job now. Now it's all dependent on whether my resume stands out versus the rest. But I think we all know, through our job search process, just getting the resume seen is one of the most important steps. So that's why I like it. And then on top of that, the LinkedIn Learning is very valuable. So if you join for a month and you knock out a few certifications, that helps beef up your profile as well.
That's right. I mean, it's a way to pay to play a little bit, right? In terms of getting your resume sort of at the front of the stack, more eyeballs on it. You're paying to play there a little bit. But yeah, I think it's also a really great KPI for the job seeker, because you can see how many people are, how many recruiters are looking at your resume, how many are reviewing, how many callbacks are you getting too, right? Because how often have you applied for a job over the years and you didn't hear back one way or another, right? You don't know if they got your email, if you sent it to the right person, did they open it, did they read it, right? This is just added analytics that I think really helps, right? And in the past, I've made tweaks to my resume and my profile based on the engagement that I was getting from recruiters and others. I thought, you know what? Let me adjust the dials a little bit and see if I get better return here over the next 3 months. And I can say that that's made a difference, right? You have data, and that data, those analytics that you get inform your strategy and your decision making.
Yep. That chart that I had on the first slide of the number of profile views, there are little tweaks that you can make that are going to send that, upwards or downwards. So constantly looking at what tweaks you're making and the effectiveness of them is pretty important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think we're pretty well caught up on questions. That's the last slide. 9 points here. Hopefully everyone got some good value out of that. I think maybe there's one question that we missed. Oh, there was one person asking, Stacy asked, any tips for indicating a career pause of 1 year or more? So I recommend, I think this is a preference thing, but I would recommend acknowledging it, that it was purposeful and that you did it for a reason. Maybe you were starting a family, or maybe you just had other reasons for why you were out of the job market for a while. But I think acknowledging those gaps in your resume, and even better if you could list something that you were involved with during that time. If it was some volunteer work, that's also helpful.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you mentioned that, Stacy, because I was reading somebody's post on LinkedIn a couple days ago. She was a hiring manager for a position, and she said, I hired someone with a 3-year gap in their resume, and I did it because, I got them on the phone. They demonstrated that they knew what they were talking about. They had continued to sharpen their saw, right? They demonstrated competence for the position. And apparently that candidate had asked the hiring manager, hey, why did you hire me, right, with a 3-year gap? Or why did you not ask me? That was the question. Why did you ask me about my 3-year gap, you know? And so this person who was publishing the post, right, the hiring manager who was recounting this experience was like, you know, you demonstrated that you learned the job. So I thought, or knew the job and had the skills that were necessary. So I'm not saying that is the general mindset, but I wanted to let you know that some folks have, you know, that response, right? They're not as concerned about the gap, especially if you can explain it and there was like sound rationale there for it. People are people. And changes happen in our life. There are moves, there are relationship changes, folks grow families, folks, you know, change their career path. Life happens. And I think that the great leaders understand that. They recognize that and they can see beyond that, right?
Yep. I have a friend right now who is in between jobs, but she's doing consulting work. Mm-hmm. And that's not her long-term plan. So that's what is filling this time frame, you know, since she left her last position until when she finds the new one. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Couple more questions came in. Nicole, do you have tips on those changing career paths and need help with revising their resume? For example, someone who provides this service. Mm-hmm. I'm not clear on which service.
Resume review.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. There are lots of people out there who specialize in writing resumes, designing resumes. And a lot of times those people will also help you kind of shape up your LinkedIn profile as well.
Mm-hmm. And what I would encourage you to do, I'm sorry, Neil, I don't have the questions pulled up on my screen. Who's the question is from who?
Nicole.
Nicole. Oh, so Nicole, I would encourage you to search people who have the jobs that you want. So search folks, for instance, if you want a director of marketing job, I would search director of marketing on LinkedIn or assistant director of marketing, associate director, right? Those sort of different variations of that same job title. And I would take a close look at their living resume, right? Their profile. What keywords and phrases are they using? How are they positioning themselves? What kind of certifications do they have? What are people saying about them and their recommendations? What does their background cover look like? Do they have a featured section? If so, what are they highlighting? And I would use that as a benchmark, one way to benchmark, right? I would look at, 3, 5, 10 different profiles, right, that fit that kind of career path. I would also encourage you to seek out 2 to 3 mentors who are in the industry that you want to position to and really lean on them, right? Ask them questions, read news, information, follow the trade media of that particular organization, right? If you want to start a career in clean tech, right? Follow green tech media, follow renewable energy world, right? Or so forth, like whatever niche industry you're trying to get into, make sure that you're staying up on current industry events and that you're talking about it. You're following those groups and issues and hashtags on LinkedIn to really help you get part of that conversation.
Yep, good advice. Lindsay asks, if you have a title change, but duties do not really change, do you recommend just changing the title or list both titles on your resume to indicate the title change? So I guess my first response to that would be, I would push on your supervisor or your employer to help you understand what responsibilities have changed, or challenge yourself to kind of carve out new responsibilities that you might be proactively taking on. I personally would, especially if it's a title that feels like upward mobility, I would list that because that's showing growth in your current career. Mm-hmm. and increased trust from your employer. Let's see here. One more question. Carly asks about career change and the steps needed to demonstrate that on LinkedIn. What advice can you give along the lines of rebranding / the transition in LinkedIn content when moving from one field to another? So I think what you were just talking about, Bridget, is a good example. It's what companies are you following? what is the content that you're posting? Just keep in mind, it doesn't happen all in one day. You don't just, all of a sudden become a different person. It's an evolution. So you have to start evolving your profile over the course of time and finding ways to optimize it so that you're more searchable for that new position that you're looking for.
Right.
All right. I think we have hit all of the questions.
All right. I think that puts us at 1 o'clock sharp. Wow, look at that, Neil.
Right on the nose.
Deadlines and on time prompt. There you go. Guys, Neil and I enjoy personal branding, professional development. We like to learn. We like to sharpen the saw. We love to grow connections. We're here to help as part of the WVU, network. We want to be a resource for you so that you can see our contact information there on the screen. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. If you have some follow-up questions, please reach out to us. But it was a pleasure talking with you today and just sharing some tips and best practices that have worked for me, at least.
Yep, really enjoyed it. Bridget, great work. Great to meet you. Great to meet everyone else, and link up with us on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day and happy 4th of July.
Thank you, guys. And special thank you to Bridget and Neil. Be sure to visit integrate.wvu.edu for upcoming sessions, including our last Career Booth Series session. You can also view the recording of this session and some of our past episodes, and be sure to subscribe for updates. So thank you guys again for being here. Thank you to our guests.
Thanks. Enjoyed
Absolutely.
it.
Thank you all.
You.